I'd like to introduce Annemaree Docking. Annemaree was raised in suburban Melbourne before moving to central Victoria when she was 17 years old to study agriculture at Dookie Agricultural College. She then worked on a range of farming enterprises across Victoria and New South Wales for over a decade. For the past 10 years, Annemaree has worked in state and local government supporting agriculture, environment and sustainability, and is currently the City of Whittlesea's Agribusiness Officer. This program focuses on the support and development of agriculture and food production in the rural north of the municipality. It's very similar to Hawkesbury, in fact, in the way it's positioned in terms of Melbourne's map it was because Whittlesea was one of the first agricultural areas servicing Melbourne and the Turong Dam, what have you. Annemaree is also a director consultant with Planet Rural, a company that aims to support farming enterprises with property design, planning and regulatory frameworks. We have to fit into this system. And in her spare time, she also runs a small mixed farming enterprise in central Victoria, Kilmore. Please welcome Annemaree to speak to us about the City of Whittlesea experience.
It's lovely to see such a great turnout here tonight and to see that there's a lot of passion for this kind of work in this area too. Always had a soft spot for the North East, spent a bit of time living around Euroa and working on horse places and that sort of thing. And as I said, went to Dookie Ag College, so I'm vaguely familiar with some of the country around here. How does this work? There we go. City of Whittlesea. I'm assuming many of you will be very familiar with the City of Whittlesea to the north of Melbourne, and you would also be aware that a lot of people think of it pretty much as an urban area now. But it is 70% rural still. And as Rob was mentioning, it was and still is a strong agricultural area, but historically we produced dairy, there was strong vegetable and fruit production in the area, and it did service into Melbourne. So 70 years ago there was a train line directly into Melbourne, and I've sat down with some of the old dairy farmers down there, and they've had their old ledger that they've brought out, that they've been able to tell me exactly how much milk was put on the train that day from that farm to be shipped into the hospitals in Melbourne. So it's been a really interesting area to work in. But it is, as you can see, increasing development out South Morang. We've got a strong manufacturing sector in spite of the downturn in the automotive industry, and a lot of that is underpinned by food manufacturing in the area. Strong retail and construction as well, clearly with the amount of houses going in. But as I mentioned, 70% rural land, and in a fairly small municipality in the scheme of things across rural Victoria, we've still got 15,000 hectares of potentially productive agricultural land in the municipality. It's currently livestock dominated, but we also recently had the Melbourne wholesale markets move into Epping with an enormous and amazing facility. As a young DPI person, I spent a little bit of time in the Footscray markets, and getting around there was taking your life into your hands if you didn't keep an eye on those forklifts. So it's quite a different facility. Some of the challenges we have in the area, a high fire risk, where Kinglake National Park and Mount Disappointment in our area, and Black Saturday hit the area very hard. Water in the area is definitely a challenge. We're currently mostly extensive agriculture and livestock based, and much of that is driven not so much by the soils, because we do have some amazing cracking clays and black soil down on the Mary Creek flats, but the Plenty River and the Mary Creek are very oversubscribed from the perspective of irrigation, and the chance of getting an irrigation licence is slim, and bore water has some but ultimately limited potential. So we're looking at other potential around water as well. Challenges facing the manufacturing sector, as mentioned, in the automotive sector downturn. Food security. We have an annual household survey as a part of our council operations, and it would potentially amaze a lot of people here that around 12 to 14% of families in our region have suffered food access and food security issues in the last year. So they have actively gone without food for a 24-hour period because they could not access or could not afford to buy food. So that is something that is significant and that we're looking to address in our area. Rate capping's familiar to many people, and it's across all government, local municipalities, so it's a challenge we're all trying to address. Ageing farming population, land value and rates, and yeah, when I say population growth, we are one of the fastest growing areas, and we're looking at a lot of people moving in. So it's important that we get the balance right around protecting our agricultural land and highlighting it as a valued asset that's a part of our economic framework. Okay, this is just gives you a bit of an idea of the green wedge areas around peri-urban Melbourne, and again a bit of a reference point for where Whittlesea sits in amongst that. But why is peri-urban agriculture important? This map came out of our land capability assessment, which I'll go into a little bit further into the presentation. But you can see the impact, the projected impact between now and 2070. This is a lower emissions scenario. This is what we're currently tracking on. So the increase in temperatures and the impact on some of these major food bowls on the north of the divide is substantial. And in our area and in peri-urban Melbourne, to a certain extent, that's mitigated by the ranges. So, and also that's familiar around here too. So we really need to keep in mind the broader impact on our food production systems of climate change into the future and plan accordingly. Yeah, increased temperatures, less reliable rainfall. These are things that I'm not telling you that are new to anyone in this room. But also balancing those challenges of population growth, biodiversity, and climate change adaptation and resilience for our communities. So my program came out of the Green Wedge Management Plan, which has been my Bible since I started. And basically it's just looking towards capitalising on the benefits of peri-urban farming, and for those of you familiar with ecological concepts, the edge effect I think is very relevant in a peri-urban space as well. We get the best of both worlds. We've got the infrastructure, the support services, the human resources of the city, while still having the rural asset as well. So it's about how do we capitalise on both of those, and especially I'm quite excited about the potential that these waste materials offer us in recycled water, which currently is in a glut in our area, and Yarra Valley Water don't know what to do with it. I'm talking to them about that. Compost and nutrients that come through urban waste streams, green waste, other byproducts out of manufacturing processes, that sort of thing, and of course the human resources that we have access to being so close to Melbourne. So the program looks at sort of two levels. So as mentioned, I'm a Dookie graduate and I worked on farms for a lot of years, so I'm more than happy to, in fact I love the days that I get to go out on farm, talk to farmers, help them nut out problems, and take that time. We run a workshop program that's tailored by our community reference group that I meet with quarterly. That's a group of local farmers, and we also publish a quarterly newsletter relevant to our rural landholders. But the strategic support it's harder work. Sometimes it's not as exciting and a little bit more tedious to get these things happening, but they're very important to support the broader regional development. So I'll just go through these projects. So the peri-urban municipal profile basically just set the scene for us. We looked at what we had, we looked at what other areas were doing, and we sort of developed a game plan. That was one of our first things that we did. It's really just an internal working document. It's just about due to be reviewed, considering the program's been going for about 3.5 years now. But it gave us a great place to start. One of the things that really just got driven home to me in that first meeting that I had with 40 farmers, it went for about 2.5 hours, and I think we discussed pretty much everything that had happened in the city of Whittlesea from a farming perspective over the last 30 years, was rates. Rates. And I am so pleased to say that in this current budget with the City of Whittlesea, the farm rate differential has been increased from 15% to 40%. So I think that is a really significant vote of confidence by the councillors and the council as a whole organisation that they do believe in local agriculture and they want to support local agriculture, and they've offered that significant farm rate discount, which is particularly for some of these farms that are within the urban growth boundary. They're under threat of development. Their properties have increased significantly in value just by the stroke of a pen of the state planning minister saying that their block of ground is now within the urban growth boundary, but they still want to farm. So this farmer here, Scott Barrow, he's about 45, he's got a couple of little kids, he's got 750 acres, runs sheep and cattle, does a great job, got a bit of a market garden going on and trying a few different crops. He wants to see out his farming career on his farm, but he's within the urban growth boundary and he was being rated out. So this program will definitely support farmers like him to keep farming in our municipality, and that's what we want them to do. The community orchard project, that didn't get quite as far as what I was hoping. This is a recycled water demonstration site that I was hoping to build on our council-owned golf course. They had a bit of ground. I thought it was a good idea. There was a recycled water pipeline there. Seemed to work to me. Couldn't quite get funding for it, but across the road is Melbourne Polytechnic, which has a farming as a part of their TAFE program, and they've got the Yan Yan farm there. They've picked up this project and they're now working with Yarra Valley Water to develop an orchard and a production horticulture course, which, considering how degraded we don't have production horticulture teaching at a university or TAFE level at the moment. So Melbourne Polytechnic's trying to fill that gap. So I'm very excited. It's early days, but I'm hoping that we'll have the community orchard / recycled water horticulture demonstration site up and running in our area in the next couple of years. And in particular, that's to showcase that recycled water can be transformative in this space, because we're not known as a horticultural area, but it literally is a case of just add water, and it's amazing what can happen. Farmers Market feasibility study has been completed. We're just in the process of going, looking at the next steps and actually getting a couple of markets up and running in the area. It was really just to look at how the best sites. There was a few different sites that were put up. We had no farmers market in the municipality. The nearest ones were Hurstbridge, Bundoora. There was nothing in the City of Whittlesea area, which goes from Thomastown all the way to Kinglake West. No farmers market. So the thing that amazed me is the support from the community was enormous. It was the biggest Facebook post response that council's ever had. There was, reached over 10 or 12,000 people. It was, the response was massive. You don't expect when you put a survey out to the community and it's a council survey, you don't expect to get 800 responses, but we got 800 responses. So, it was clearly very, very popular. We had a lot of support, so we're just in the stages of hopefully 3 markets, at least 2, getting those up and running in the area. But that was certainly a worthwhile exercise. Land capability assessment. Now, this is the big one. So this has been run as a postgraduate industry scholarship with Deakin University. It's a 3-year PhD program, and basically it's looking at assessing all the biophysical aspects of the region, assessing basically a landscape optimisation, soil, water, climate impact. So it's all with that lens of what the land can do now and what the land can do 50 years from now in a climate variable future. It also includes within that assessment novel resources like we were talking before, recycled water and other waste products that can be channelled into supporting agriculture in the area. And one of the outputs will be the interactive mapping, which basically you'll be able to go online if you're a new business to the area, if you're an existing business, and you'll be able to look at these maps and get an idea of what's going to be well suited to your area. And this will also inform an agribusiness prospectus to try and attract new businesses into the area. And most importantly, from an advocacy perspective, it shows the value of the ground, and it also shows the economic potential to create jobs on the ground in our area, which again enhances the resilience and adaptability and sustainability of our region. And this last project is just coming online hopefully next year. As mentioned, in all the spare time I have, I decided to take up master's studies, and the project that I'm hoping to do is definitely looking at what David was talking about and leveraging the other industry in our area that's growing really strongly, and that's food manufacturing. We've had the Plenty Food Group in our area that covers the City of Whittlesea and the City of Hume, manufacturing businesses for the last 10 years. There's over 7,000 people employed in this sector. There's a huge number of businesses. Plenty Food Group already has established relationships with them, and the project is going to look at how we can shorten supply chains and streamline linkages so that instead of, as I experienced at my Fine Food Melbourne event, instead of one of our cheese manufacturers importing bell peppers from Spain to stuff with cream cheese, they can bring them in from a local producer, and if no one's growing them, they can talk to someone about growing them. So, and it's about developing these communications and relationships and how we can do that. So that's pretty much been our experience to date. It's really looking at that, a very broad base, a number of different projects, but that have a lot of co-benefits, not only for the industries that are directly involved, but also for the broader community, reducing transport pressures by creating employment where people are living rather than getting them to drive into town, and building that sustainability and support for the community in a whole range of different levels. So, but always using agriculture and our rural asset as a centrepiece to that.
Thanks, Annemaree.
Peter.
We will have time for just a couple of questions. I'd just like to comment on really interesting connections between David talking about agriculture needs to be at the core of everything that happens, and you've been talking a lot about the importance of structural supports in place for agriculture to thrive, not just now, but what it's going to be in the future. So that was really interesting. And on top of that, then you can lay the whole marketing and culture of the food system. So thank you for that. It's fantastic. Peter, you were very hasty in putting your hand up.
Gillian, you know, I've admired your role at local government for a long time. Is it a natural fit for local government? And if it is, why has it not been taken up more widely? I mean, I mean that in a very general sense that, you know, everyone lays it at local government, but actually if your role is bringing in all this business and so on, why has it not been more widely adopted?
Okay, so two things. I'm one of two agribusiness officers pretty much that I'm aware of in the state. The other one is in Mornington Peninsula and they've done great work. I think previously this role, essentially what I'm doing is an extension officer role. And I used to be an extension officer for the department. I used to be a beef industry development officer. I used to work in Bendigo and I travelled all the northwest corner of the state. And it's essentially a very similar role to the one that I'm playing now. But particularly in the peri-urban spaces, the DPI or Digita or DELP or whoever you want to call them now, when I was in DPI, we didn't take peri-urban agriculture seriously, as the organisation didn't. The organisation didn't take small farming seriously, and it just didn't offer that support. And the City of Whittlesea has been innovative enough through their greenweed management plan to identify that they have an asset there that they're not getting state government support for, and so they've put their own support in place. I think that we should have more state government roles, and it shouldn't be. I was doing a fee-for-service role as an extension officer and it did my head in. We already pay for this support and it should be offered. The old-fashioned extension officer that used to come around and have a cup of tea and bounce ideas off, it doesn't exist in DPI anymore, but that's the role that I kind of get to play now, which I really enjoy. So I think there should be more of it, and I think as this program gets more legs and shows more results, other peri-urban entities will take it up.
My question was sort of the same too. It was to do with how responsible the peri-urban councils in responding, but also on the back of what you've just said. Are you hooking in with land care? How strong is your land care?
Yeah, land care is really interesting in our area. We're surrounded by really strong land care areas. And we did have, going back sort of 15 years, a really strong land care presence. There was the Whittlesea and Arthurs Creek Salinity Management Project, WACMAC or something it was called, and it was substantial. We have had Mariang Land Care Group, which used to produce seedlings for Melbourne Water and had its own nursery, and it was, you know, it was fantastic. But the thing is, they relied on the same volunteers, and pretty much after Black Saturday, a lot of those volunteers, they just ran out of legs. It's an ageing community, and those land care programs largely just kind of just wound up quietly.
Taken the role of Debbie in lots of the areas up here.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've actually just recently won funding again through DELP to have a part-time land care facilitator, and that's on a job share arrangement with another officer that's looking at community gardens and that food access and health aspect. And that's about to commence. We're just recruiting now, but that will make a huge difference in the area to get land care up and running again. I totally agree. Yeah.
One more question. One of the things we need to be conscious of with this is that while there are a lot of detailed questions in this, it might be one of the things with the third workshop we're having is to say we need to learn more about this area or that area or the other area, and that will be an opportunity to have more detailed discussions about some of this stuff. But as general stuff, if there's one more question, and then we really do need to move on.
Sorry, mine was sort of a double-edged question. With the increase in population, do you see that because the Whittlesea community will increase its own population, or people will move out of Melbourne, for example, to increase that population?
Yep.
And in doing so, what protects the current rural area that exists?
Okay, so all of Melbourne has an urban growth boundary. The urban growth boundary in our area cuts at Masons Road. So even when, it goes sort of Wollert, Donnybrook, up the Hume. The population you're seeing, the growth is not a natural increase, it's people moving in, and it's people from everywhere. People from Melbourne, people from overseas, people from whoever wants to buy a house, they're moving in. And it's a very eclectic group, so culturally diverse, professionally and career diverse, education levels, the whole lot. The thing that's protecting the rural asset at the moment is that urban growth boundary, but as in the past that we've seen, when the case isn't made for the value of that area, that arbitrary boundary gets shifted because the developers have a stronger voice saying that this land's worth more under houses, whereas as rural people and agriculturalists and people that are interested in food security, we need to develop our advocacy case, and that's one of my main driving forces behind the land capability assessment, is we have to have strong voices to say this is worth jobs, this is worth food security, this is worth climate resilience, and this is really important to our community. You can't move the line, so even when that urban growth boundary is full with houses, City of Whittlesea is still 60% rural. Okay, so that's still an asset worth protecting. The other thing is those greenfield sites that are being developed now, we need to think better about how those neighbourhoods are designed. We need to integrate agriculture into those systems, not just go from a bang of urban into rural. We need market gardens in that space. We need to utilise and leverage, use the recycled water where it is. Have peppercorn leases and young farmers and, community box programs and sheep grazing on the encumbered land that's covered in rocks that you can't get a slasher onto for fuel load reduction. It makes sense to rural people, but...
The importance of powerful advocacy,
yes,
which is something that Hawkesbury Harvest has developed a capacity to advocate, wasn't what they originally set out to be, but it was what they developed a capacity to do that once you had the connections happening.
Yeah.
So,
whereas we've sort of set out with a bit of that in mind.
Okay.
Okay.
A role for advocacy may well be something that this group identifies as a need in the third workshop.